Is the F1 2025 Drivers' Championship being manipulated, as many would like you to believe, and are asking that very question right now with the disqualification of McLaren? While I went back to bed after waking up at an ungodly hour to watch the Vegas Grand Prix and do my live watch-along stream for you, McLaren got disqualified. They were being investigated just before I went to sleep, but I couldn't stay up like many others to find out whether the FIA were actually going to DQ them. And this sort of stuff is normally a slam dunk. We have seen this precedent multiple times throughout this regulation set. A few years ago with Mercedes, we've seen it this year recently with Nico Hülkenberg and Lewis Hamilton in the Chinese Grand Prix earlier on in the year. And there's only really by some proper extenuating circumstance but this was never going to be a DQ, although McLaren did try their best, and that's supposedly why it did take so long. Andrea Stella went into the stewards room to try and convince them that there were force majeure, reasons outside of their control, which meant they had excessive plank wear, but the stewards didn't agree with it. And so yes, is the question is it being manipulated? No, this is not being manipulated right now. I know how it can look at face value, that the FIA and F1 Liberty Media, there's nothing more that they'd love than a freeway championship fight and at least the championship going to the last race of the season. 100%, it makes total business sense, and from a fan's perspective, I would love the championship to at least go to the last race of the season, because Abu Dhabi is a boring race. It is the worst track to have at a finale at. Okay, maybe other than Monaco, but normally Abu Dhabi is just boring. We need something to look forward to. So this, however, is not manipulation. This is purely McLaren arguably throwing away what should be the easiest drivers' championship in the world. We know we've got to this point in the season where neither driver has really been able to take proper control of the championship. Oscar Piastri should really, at this stage, with his dramatic fall off, be leading the championship, but he's not. That's then switched to Lando, who should be going into these last two race weekends with over a 30-point lead on Oscar Piastri and a 42-point lead on Max. Now, that's only 24 points because he has picked up nil points because of that DQ. Max has picked up 25 full points and is now under that race win difference to Lando Norris. So all it takes in the last two races, with one of them being a sprint race weekend, is for Lando to have a DNF, which is not out the realms of possibility. It leaves Max Verstappen, that aggressive nature that we know he has, an opportunity to make a move. He can afford Lando Norris to kind of back out to an extent, take the ball by the ball by the horns. Will he be able to do it is another question, because arguably Qatar and Abu Dhabi are two tracks where I expect McLaren to do well at. But the manipulation side of things, no, it's all on McLaren. Like, this is something that with the plank wear, the setup of their car, they blame the fact of kind of the uninterrupted running throughout the race weekends, which sometimes normally is a valid excuse. We normally see these plank wear issues occur on sprint race weekends because they only have one setup session, one practice session to get the car really set up and to gather all the necessary data. Then the sprint race is of course held on much lower fuel loads, so they don't get the necessary data required to get the proper ride height, and these teams want to run the ride height as low as possible. And this is my theory behind this, is the reason as to why McLaren have run their ride height so low and had their issues. I don't quite agree with we've had uninterrupted running and we couldn't gather the necessary data to get the setup right. No, I think McLaren have historically this season been weaker than the Red Bull, than the Mercedes at low downforce street circuits. Canada, Baku, here, they weren't looking too good on the Friday either. And I think, as we know, in this era of regulations, that you have to run the car as low as possible to be able to gain as much performance. And I think that's what they've done. I think they've taken a calculated risk to ensure that they could compete for the race win. However, it's backfired on them, and you could see through images of Oscar Piastri, even within the DRS, where arguably there's less load on the car because you're releasing the air pressure on the rear wing. He was sparking up more than a Christmas tree on fire. Like, it was just, it was so much coming off of there. And really, the whole fuel situation, as many were stating in my watch along at the time, that he's going to get DQ'd, Lando. More hopium than anything. And I called it fake news because it was fake news. I think he would have had more than enough fuel at the end of the race. And it was quite a dramatic fuel saving in those last few laps. But it was actually to ensure that the skid wear, the plank wear, was not going to be under. But even with those last few laps of considerable lift and coast and going as slow as he did, to ensure that there wasn't as much load on the car, because of course the faster you go, especially at the end of a very long straight like the strip there, you are putting a lot of load on the car, and it obviously moves itself into the surface, and that's why you get the sparks and so forth. But other teams were able to run their ride height a bit higher and still be quicker than that of the McLaren. But as we said, it's been the weakness of the McLaren. So yeah, McLaren fumbled it here for Oscar and for Lando. More so for Lando now, because Lando he's still in the driving seat for the World Championship. Let's be real. He only needs to outscore Oscar and Max Verstappen by 2 points in Qatar over the whole duration of the race weekend. He needs over 25 points, basically. He's got a 24-point difference to ensure that he wins the title before Abu Dhabi. But I think what may happen, I mean, I do expect Lando to probably go and win Qatar, to be honest. I think even, like, he wasn't happy about the race, the win. He wasn't happy about losing the race win today, and it was just a complete different change in mindset. But manipulation, no, definitely not. But overall, I think everyone is kind of a bit happy that they've got disqualified, because it means a championship very well could go to the end of the season. And if Max Verstappen does win this championship, McLaren only have themselves to blame, really. Let's be real. I actually find it admirable, and I do agree with them allowing their drivers to fight and not necessarily favouring one over the other, especially when people said they should have favoured Piastri or they should have favoured Lando at certain points. People even saying that they should favour Lando now, with 2 race weekends remaining, and I still don't think that's the case, because you've set a precedent throughout the duration of this season of allowing your drivers to fight. To now do that when still mathematically it is possible for Oscar Piastri to win this title. He's doesn't look like on form. He's gone however many races now, 5, 6, 7 races without a podium, and that is absolutely crazy to say that, by the way, considering he was leading by over 30 points after Zandvoort. So I think they just have to still let them fight. And look, I think this track was very specific to this plank wear. I don't think it will occur at a nice smooth track surface like Qatar is, like Abu Dhabi is. They're purpose-built racetracks, although Qatar is more purpose-built for MotoGP, but still, it's a nice, much smoother track surface, as is Abu Dhabi. You're not going to have these big bumps, these big issues of the skid plank wear. And yeah, it's just a case of McLaren maybe just being too risky overall. But for Max Verstappen fans and for Max Verstappen himself, I mean, that's probably something he didn't expect after this weekend, that he'd still have a better opportunity of winning this championship. And it's not over till it's over, is it? That's the thing. It's definitely not over till it's over. And who knows what's going to happen in Qatar with it being a sprint race weekend. Will the McLarens collide? Will Max do something? I don't know, but it definitely makes this championship a lot more interesting. But McLaren are definitely the ones to blame.